Shabbos. Sometimes something that is a curse can turn into a great blessing. What am I talking about? When the Jews came to Israel, their homes sometimes would get these spots called saras. And the Torah tells us in this portion that when that happened, first you had to peel off or take away those stones which had the spot. But if it came back again and it was even after fixing it, it came back again, then you had to actually destroy the home. Now, when the Torah tells us this, it introduces the whole story in a very strange way. Unlike when you have leprosy, these spots on your body or on your garments, where the Torah says, if there shall be these spots on your person or on the garment, here the Torah introduces it, when you come to the land of Israel, I will put these spots into your homes. It's almost like, hey, a blessing. There's a great thing happening here. And our sages indeed say that there was a hidden blessing here. What was it? The Rashi brings that the Amorites, one of the nations in Israel, would hide their treasures in their homes because they heard that the Jews are coming back. So they wanted to hide the treasures in the home. And when the Jews then would get these spots and have to knock down the home, they'd find the treasures. The question is, what's the point of hiding the treasures in the homes if you're going to be kicked out and you're not going to be there and the Jews are going to live with these treasures? What have you gained? You haven't gained anything by putting it in the homes. Why would they have done that? Another question is, there were 7 nations in Israel. Why is this nation, why does Rashi single out this nation of the Amorites? So when God tells Abraham that his children will be slaves in a land that isn't theirs for 400 years, afterwards they'll come back to here. He says on the 4th generation, they're going to come back because the sin of the Amorites has not been filled yet. And therefore, only after 4 generations will they come back, because then their sins will be full and they'll have to be kicked out of the land because the land doesn't handle sins. So the Amorites knew this. It says as soon as the Jews leave Egypt, they know it's already 4 generations. Their bucket is full of sins. They're going to be kicked out. The Jews are going to take over. But if this is what causes someone to be kicked out of Israel, sins, they know, hey, the Jews might be kicked out of there after, and we'll be able to come back and get our treasures. But the question is, why single out one of these 7 nations? Why only the Amorites? Why not all the nations? So what the Torah is trying to teach us here is something about the Amorites and the treasures. And in general, there's a whole other question here. And the question is like this. We know that saras, this leprosy, these spots on your homes and on the person and on the garments, were a punishment for a sin of lashon hara, speaking negatively about others. So how is it that this punishment all of a sudden becomes this great blessing? Why should he find a treasure in his home if the reason he got a spot on his home was because he spoke lashon hara? What message is there? So the idea is as follows: that in our speech, we have 2 powers. We have this power to speak badly, we have the power to speak positively. The person is taught that same speech that you used, which spoke negatively about others, can actually be used by speaking positively about people, by complimenting people. And by doing so, you actually are helpful to others instead of being hurtful to others. Indeed, the Zohar says that there's 2 aspects to lashon hara. There's the negative speech, and there's also withholding positive speech. That withholding positive speech is also seen in a negative way, and therefore, say some of the commentaries that one of the ingredients of purifying the leper was to bring 2 pigeons. One was slaughtered as a sacrifice, and the other was sent off. Why the 2 pigeons? The pigeon that was slaughtered represents Lashon Hara, the tweeting and tweeting of speaking negatively. That has to be killed. That has to be shut down. And the pigeon that's released is the positive speech that you have to release and allow to go forward and allow to be revealed. And this is why, this is the message of the Amorites having treasures in their home. He's saying that very Emori means talk. That talk that was a cause of destruction, now you could see in that talk as a source of treasure. When you're going to use it in a positive way, it could actually be a source of treasure. So when we learn from the negative and we transform it to positive, then we can have treasure in our home. Because this, just like Lashon Hara takes a big person and makes him small, Lashon Tov, positive speech, takes a small person and makes him big. That's why we find that the Torah speaks so positively about Noah. Noach is tzaddik, Noach is a tzaddik. It says it more than once, it says it twice. And it doesn't say this about many other of the characters in the Torah. Why is it? Because Noah had a big task to do. He had to save humanity. And in order for him to be able to overcome the difficulty of all the people against him, not wanting to save humanity through his ark, he needed to be given the power to do so. And the power was the compliments that he received. So positive speech has a dual of impact. One is on the person speaking. When you speak positively by others, it brings out the good in you, and it brings out the good in the person you speak about. That's the power of speech, to magnify our positive emotions and our negative emotions, for that matter. That's why you're not meant to speak words of anger when you're angry, because then will pull you down. And that's why you're meant to speak words of love when you're feeling love, because that, or even when you're not, because that magnifies the love as well. So the power of positive speech is tremendous. So maybe we could focus not so much, of course we shouldn't do it, but focus in the area of speech, not so much on what not to say, but more so on what to say and how to be positive and speak positively, because that can be a boon for the person you speak about and for yourself. There's a rabbi in Beersheba in Israel who was the rabbi of prisoners, and he would give a shir once a week to the prisoners. And they told him that there's one guy who's in solitary, or maybe not being solitary, but he's usually alone. And he's not a guy to go to. He's a mean guy. He looks harsh. He's scary. It's very scary. Broad, mean face, long hair. And you know what? Just leave him alone. Don't try to bring him in to our little group and so on. He could be dangerous. Anyway, the rabbi, however, said, let me try. He goes into him, and he hears his life story, and he speaks to them about the neshama, the soul of every person, and how to bring it out, and so on. After speaking to him about this, he says, would you like to put on tefillin? He says, yes. Rolls up his sleeve, and the rabbi takes a step back. What? He sees a very immodest picture on the arm, to the extent that he's not sure if he should put on tefillin on a immodest tattoo on the person's arm. But he decided that the positive would outweigh the negative, and he puts it on. Next week, he comes back again, and the guy is so happy to see him, and he receives him with a smile and says, you're the first guy who ever spoke positive to me, who ever saw anything good in me. And then he rolls up his sleeve again, and the rabbi takes a step back. This time, he sees that it's his entire skin is like totally mangled. He says, what happened? And there's no tattoo. He says, I saw how shaken up you were last week when you saw my tattoo. I took harsh salt and I rubbed it on my arm the whole week until I can get rid of it. That's what you could achieve by speaking positively, even to someone who seems like there's not much good in them. So certainly with our families, with our children, with our spouses, with the people around us, always find a positive thing to say to them. It'll bring out the good in you, it'll bring out the good in them, it'll bring goodness, and who knows what treasures you might find. Good Shabbos.